It's been a long time since Conor McGregor hurt his leg in that fight with Dustin Poirier, and he just came out and released a clip of his sparring with what seemingly looks like a welterweight-sized fighter. And Conor looks good pushing off the leg, kicking with it, taking off angles, landing good left hands. The return of Conor McGregor is looking pretty promising, and he shows some really good technique here, which shows that he hasn't really lost it, at least for sparring. Going against a much bigger man here, Conor shows some great speed to be able to counter his opponent's attacks. For an example, when his sparring partner throws a round body kick after measuring with his left hand, Conor quickly sidesteps to the outside angle to get the kick away from himself and also lining up his left hand at the exact same time and lands it flush. He actually hits his sparring partner pretty hard here, and it's not training camp, so it shows you this is Conor hard sparring, and if he is hard sparring right now, it's just to get himself back into the rhythm, get used to the full impact. And right after he lands the left hand and his opponent comes forward, Conor fakes an outside step, which usually means he's lining up the left hand, and you can see how his sparring partner picks up his hands in order to guard the center. Not the sides, but the center. He has a closed guard and ultimately moves away, but it was a feint from Conor just to get his opponent moving and see his reaction, as well as knowing that his opponent is also going to move into his own right side, which is the direction that Conor would be able to land his left hand. The reason why his sparring partner did not move out to his left is because Conor cut off that angle with the outside step. And ultimately, his sparring partner got closer to the fence, which allowed Conor to box him in even better so he can line up his shots more precisely. And you can see Conor does it again as his opponent guards up on the center and is only forced to move to his own right side into Conor's potential left hand, but Conor never really throws it. I think that's the element of sparring. He's just trying to feel things out here and ultimately starts working on his defense in the middle of it as he guards up on his opponent's jab, pulls away on the right uppercut, and the left hand looks like it may have landed around the guard, but hard to tell because of the camera angle. But notice how the sparring partner switched into southpaw, so he's mirroring Conor's stance, and as you know, Conor has a harder time against southpaws than he does against orthodox fighters, mainly because they can use the jab against him, and especially someone with a longer reach. Mimicking even Nate Diaz's fights with Conor, the jab is going to be peppered in his face unless he's able to drastically move his head to evade it, which really isn't a good rule of thumb. You tend not to want to make big head movements against small attacks because you never know if those are setups. If you drastically move your head and dip to a side, you don't know if his opponent was just using that in order to bait you into a trap and now they're intercepting your head movement. The bigger the head movement, the more drastic the interception shot can be. And also what this is going to show is some of the welterweight's reach advantage on Conor McGregor and how it could be difficult for him to get inside on that reach. As when he gets hit by the jab, he tries to enter behind a looping right hook and gets himself extremely overextended. So a potential southpaw Usman, which you see regularly these days, with one of the best jabs in the UFC, he can absolutely make Conor pay for this kind of an exchange. Or it's someone like even Hamza Chimaev can do the exact same thing, who also has a very good southpaw jab. From there though, you're able to see that Conor's sparring partner switch stances back into the orthodox and just start pumping out jabs again, which was a bit questionable considering how much more successful he would have been in southpaw doing that. In the orthodox, Conor probing out his lead hand is able to measure the distance of his opponent's jab, so Conor just backsteps away from it, but notice what kind of range he got into. He went from long boxing range into kicking range. And that's when he fires out the high kick. Conor could be a master at distance management when he's going up against an orthodox fighter, which you've seen routinely throughout his entire career when he fought Eddie Alvarez, Jose Aldo, even as early as Ivan Butchinger, etc. Conor is almost perfect when it comes to measuring distance against orthodox fighters. And he was able to land a high kick before his opponent was able to get the correct guard up there. But because they have shin guards and headgear, and the fact that Conor didn't throw at full power, of course, doesn't want to hurt his sparring partner, his sparring partner uses that as an advantage, grabs the leg, and pushes Conor into the fence using his size. I mean, look at the size difference here. Conor's getting completely smushed against the fence. And his opponent isn't even going for a takedown or even clinching up or anything. He's merely just pushing his body into Conor's. And this is a clear example of how bad it could be when these natural welterweights get Conor up against the fence. Imagine Hamza in this position with Conor. But he does get out of this situation briefly before the clip ends. And it's mainly because of his sparring partner not really getting any kind of grip. They do have boxing gloves on, so it's going to be hard to even do that. And Conor just pushed away, angled off to his left, and it looks like he might have been able to escape, but who really knows? And I know some people are questioning Conor throwing spinning back kicks to the face and flying knees in sparring, but if you really pay attention to the spinning back kick, he has full control of it. He actually doesn't extend it all the way. He hits his sparring partner and does not fully extend for maximum power. And even the flying knee, he didn't fully explode with it. He jumped with it, but didn't have a great amount of momentum, for an example, the way he threw it at Donald Cerrone. And what this tells me is Conor is looking good. Technically, and even counting his injury, Conor's return looks pretty promising. But I just don't want to see him at welterweight. He will definitely have a speed advantage against most of the guys up there. In fact, probably everybody up there. And he could hurt any of them with a left hand. But I don't think he will be able to put him out with a single left like he did against the featherweights or even potentially against some of the lightweights. There's a lot of guys in the welterweight division that have a very good chin. And it's the division with the strongest wrestlers. So they're definitely going to use their size advantage against Conor that other weight classes would not be able to do. Now I'm just wondering when he's going to come back and who he's going to come back against. With Nate Diaz not an option anymore, would it be the winner of Chandler versus Poirier? That seems to be the most logical when it comes to star power. He has to always main event a pay-per-view, and against Dustin or Chandler, he can absolutely do that. Or is there some other legend or older fighter out there that he can go up against? The only welterweight that would be somewhat logical would be him and Robbie Lawler, especially with the fact that they had history at one point. If anybody doesn't remember when Robbie was asked to fight Conor, and he said in the most terrifying way that he wouldn't take his neck, he'd take his soul. Maybe they can run that and see how it in fact happens now with Robbie much older in his career. But it would be a much deserved payday for Robbie Lawler.